All right, everybody. Welcome to the first video in our installment, or our series rather, of Who the Heck Is This Guy? We had talked, myself and several other instructors that I've met over the years, and one of the things that I've noticed is the more skilled that somebody is, the less promotional material is usually out there for them. And especially for a new student, that can be a little bit difficult to pick through who's good to train with and who's not. And also considering that a lot of the instructors that we've met that have great promotional material out there, sometimes those bios get a little bit inflated, or certain parts get exaggerated just a little bit. I won't go too much into there. Everybody can probably figure that one out for themselves. So I'm here today with Phil Peplinski, Grandmaster, I think, Phil Peplinski at this point, who's running a local seminar for us that I've been going to for about 4 years now. And in this video, we're going to go into a little bit of Phil's background, what the seminar is, and kind of what drove some of his evolution into where he is right now. So with that said, thanks, Phil, for meeting with me.
Thank you, Aaron.
Yeah.
Appreciate it, man. I really do.
So tell me a little bit about where you started out in the martial arts.
I started in the martial arts basically in like the mid-'80s, and just, it's something I always wanted to do, and was looking for something for physical fitness that wasn't boring. And so I went to the closest martial arts studio down the street and walked in the front door and started. It happened to be Taekwondo at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And just kind of kept going from there.
Yeah, I know Taekwondo gets bashed a lot, but a lot of people I know got their start in it because it's around so much.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's Taekwondo is Taekwondo. Everything has its place. Taekwondo is great at teaching kicking. Mm-hmm. It's primarily a leg art. It's a good kicking and striking art. And if you take it for what it is, you can learn how to generate tremendous power in your kicks with body rotation. So I mean, it's got its place. It's just not the top of the line as far as something you want to look at for combative purposes.
I definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
So, were you in the Air Force at the time when you picked up Taekwondo, or?
No, I had just gotten out of the Air Force. At that time, I put 8 years in. Loved it. Probably would have stayed in it into retirement if it wasn't for a medical issue we had with a family member. But neither here nor there. So it was just after I got out that I started training in martial arts.
Well, taking care of your family is definitely important. That's
yeah.
They only get one Phil, and you only get one set of family members. So.
Yeah, pretty much.
So what did you do in the Air Force? I remember you mentioning something about combat photography, and you were one of the last of a dying breed on that one. And
exactly. Actually, when I enlisted, I had a photographic background at the time, and the recruiter goes, "Well, look, we have a combat photographer." He goes, "However, I see it's being phased out." He says, "But it's still available, so you can have that if you want it." I'm like, well, that sounds kind of cool. It had a glamorous title to it and everything like that. I said, "Yeah, let's go for that." And I was able to skip tech school because of my background in it, and went straight to my duty station out of basic training. So I was this young looking lad that looked like maybe his mom didn't even know he left home. When I got to my first duty station, which was Luke Air Force Base. And the photographic end of things, doing that in the Air Force, gave me great exposure to more things that I could possibly imagine or possibly ever dream of. Everything in the military is documented. I don't care what it is. So I was involved with various crimes, breaking and enterings, suicides, murders, car accidents, various accidents that happen on base, running down and taking pictures of microscopic FOD damage to jet engine turbine blades.
FOD being foreign
object damage, Look, there's the thread of a screw, and from that they could identify what screw it was, potentially. I got to walk on an SR-71 at the time. I had a lot of flying hours. It was awesome. I spent a tremendous amount of time in Hueys and all kinds of aircraft. It was awesome.
I've seen some of those old pictures that you've scanned in. They're pretty interesting from a historical perspective, definitely.
I can't wait till I can scan the negatives that I have, because I don't know what I have. I forgot.
going to be interested to pick through some of that myself. So after that got phased out, I know you had mentioned that that got phased out while you were in. What did you go to after that?
Well, while I was in there, they said, look, you need to have a war skill. They called it a war skill at the time. So pick another AFSC, which is the Air Force's term for Army's MOS. So at that time, I chose law enforcement, which was another interest to me. And traditionally, when you get this war skill, basically you'd be trained and then not really do much with it, but maybe a weekend every month or something like that. But coincidentally at that time, once I got cross-trained into that, something was going on in either South America or Mexico, I forget what it was, and half the military police were shipped off base to that location. And they said, look, we've got another guy. We're going to pull him from his photographic duties and throw him into full-time law enforcement. So that's what I did like the last 2 years.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So it was really great. I mean, I had an awesome experience in the military. I really miss it. It was awesome.
Got a little bit of a chance to go hands-on and,
I had my own car, man. I had a police car. I had a radar gun. It was a K-15 at the time. It's funny.
They had you styling around there then.
It was.
That's awesome.
Turns out it didn't fit me too well because I was supposed to arrest people for things I didn't want to arrest them for.
Well, I think we could always use a couple more law enforcement personnel that have a little bit more of a conscience, especially in today's day and age.
It could help. It could help.
So, you started out in Taekwondo and then you stuck around in that for about how long?
Well, forever. I'm still teaching it, so I guess I never left it. And it's been probably 30 years now. But after that, I started getting exposed to Hapkido. And when I started to see Hapkido, I was like, wow, man, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. I loved it. The joint locking and the throws and everything, it just kind of complemented the Taekwondo. The Taekwondo gave me legs and striking, and now I had something else that was showing me, stand-up grappling, really, for lack of a better term, and joint lock. So we pursued that and beat the crap out of each other for a long time. Loved it.
Yeah, I've noticed that's been a little bit different in my experience because I think everybody in America gets a little bit of experience with the Korean arts, and there's so many gyms out there that are teaching them that it's a broad variety of competency levels and school focus. And coming over to your gym, it wasn't, oh, I'm going to show you this wrist lock and you're going to do this. It was, I'm going to show you this wrist lock. Do whatever you think is most prudent to keep from getting broken. that's
reality.
Yeah.
Early on, I kept wanting to come back to reality. I enjoyed the beauty of the art, but it wasn't fitting. It wasn't fitting what's real. Mm-hmm. So everything kept coming back to reality-based type things. Even in the joint locking, we don't do the high throws and the high falls. You're not going to do a high break fall. Do a high break fall out there on that concrete without your mats. Show me what that looks like.
We'd have to get a good mic for that one. We don't miss any
I
of the good sounds.
I don't want to miss any of the ankle-shattering moments.
Yeah. So, what were you doing for a day job during that time? Was that when you were working hospital security, or?
Well, the dates kind of get mixed up, but basically somewhere in that time period, I worked ER security, Tampa General graveyard shift. It was just me and another person. They started something new. Generally speaking, security in hospitals, you have a security company and they're all over the hospital. They handle all aspects of it. Well, at the time, Tampa General was trying something new where we had 2 dedicated security people in the ER, and that's where they stayed. We wore polo shirts, nice dress pants, dress shoes, much more of a professional presentation. Because, when they're coming into the door, we're the first person they pretty much ran into. Mm-hmm. So our job was to maintain the peace in a level 1 trauma center, which I had no experience with whatsoever. And literally the first 6 months or so, my head was reeling just from the exposure and the experience of trauma, human tragedy, just, oh my God, everything you could possibly imagine. Gangbangers that are getting shot at 2 o'clock in the morning. And so 2 gangbangers are shot up. One's on one trauma room, one's in another section, and then you got the group on this side threatening the group on this side, and well, me and my buddy Gary was his name at the time. We're in the middle trying to keep peace.
Trying to keep the evening
So
from
I
being too
learned a
much more
lot. I
fun.
learned a lot about human nature and how to deal with people in that period of time that I was there. You know, they really frown upon you as a security specialist in an ER harming the patients. So everything is about, well, how do I get around this? How do I solve this problem without getting to violence?
That's been interesting to see in some of the training I've done with you as well, is the verbal component, which, you know, I think it's probably one of the two most underserved areas, the verbal de-escalation and then, you know, medical in
You're absolutely
training.
right.
You know, it's not
Yeah.
sexy, but if it keeps you from getting broken,
And
then
it's difficult to teach the verbal. Because how do you teach the verbal? You say, well, I'm going to give you this scenario. Now, here's an option that you could use to handle it verbally.
Mhm.
The problem with that is that I can't give you the entire plot of the story.
yeah.
I can give you the first line, and then based on the first line and that person's reaction determines what your next line is.
Mhm.
It can't be the one that's on paper because it's not going to fit.
And people don't follow scripts too well.
No, they don't. No.
So, you know, it sounds like a lot of hands-on experience there, and then, you know,
Yeah.
a couple of years down the road, you had kind of had that focus on reality-based training, and you had mentioned that you had a website at one point to kind of compile a lot of the fight videos that were out, and
Yeah.
accidents and people getting shot and
Yeah.
stabbed, and
And actually, I'm not going to say the name of that website at this time on film because I'm going to keep that kind of quiet because there's some potential possibilities that I may get it back. So
Okay.
I don't want to kibosh that.
well, we're going to cross our fingers on that one. However, there is a group on Facebook called Streetwise,
Yeah.
which is the current place that you can go and find a lot of the videos and commentary and have a conversation, you know, a little bit more in depth than, lol, that guy got his head bashed in by that bat.
Right.
Well, at
Right.
least for the most part. Sometimes it is pretty funny to see.
But when I developed that website, here's one of the things that occurs. If you watch one fight, okay, one street fight, you can stand back and say, well, I observed this, this, and this. If you watch 10 street fights, you can say, wow, I've seen this, this, and this, and this was common in about 80% of the videos. But again, that was only 10. If you watch 100 or 1,000 or 2,000, you're going to start to see a pattern of human behavior. And that was the greatest thing that picking up. When I created that website, I was essentially studying violence and doing my best to collect every type of violence I could. And I did. I've got thousands and thousands and thousands of videos in my possession, some that I think I haven't even seen on the internet for a long time. If I brought them back out, they might be new.
Yeah. Well, they definitely go in cycles, and every 6 months somebody tags you and,
Yeah, yeah.
oh, this guy got shot. You carry a gun, right? Thanks
Right.
for putting that out on the internet, dude.
So as a result of studying those, you know, you get a good sense as to how things can potentially play out. And then again, as I look back at my martial arts training, it didn't fit the reality mold. It fit something else, some make-believe pattern that we thought we were going to follow, and everything was going to come up roses. So it didn't.
Stupid reality getting in the
Stupid
way of our
reality.
fantasies. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, after that, when did the seminar that we, you know, are coming up on the 23rd of April, the Freaky at the Tiki, when did that kind of come?
Yeah. Well, but I'll mention that in a second. We'll also throw in there that there's another art that I studied, and that's Torite Jutsu.
Okay, yeah.
Torite Jutsu is the study of martial science, really, heavily based on traditional Chinese medicine and explaining specific targeting. When I started learning that, it took me 15 years to get where I'm at in the Torite Jutsu, and if I look at my martial arts like Taekwondo being a square of a quilt and Hapkido being a square of a quilt, and anything else I learned was other squares, the Torite was the thread that started to join these squares together and make them. My Hapkido effectiveness went up tenfold. My Taekwondo kicking and striking went up tenfold, just on specific targeting and understanding what I was hitting and how to hit it. So that came in there, and that was very important in the mix of all this, because there's some basic philosophies in Torah Taijutsu. Basically, keep all weapons in play, keep all weapons pointing at your core at all times. You get 1/4 second to enter and cause effect. So it had basis in a solid foundation. So once I threw all that into there, and now we're still getting closer and closer to reality, but now I'm in this nice, cool dojang, or training center, my sterile environment with all my compliant people. That's pretty far from reality. So the thing with the Freaky Tiki was to get them out of this sterile environment and throw them into a crowded, chaotic environment with impromptu weapons at their disposal. You and I, we can teach somebody something by telling them something all day long, and they'll get X percentage of what we tell them, and the rest is just brainwashed out, right? Mm-hmm. It's not until they start getting hands-on and doing things that they actually learn and start to retain this stuff. And they get that light bulb moment, like, oh, I get it now. This is why I'm doing this, or this is why I can't do this, because I've lost my space. When I start throwing you into an environment that you're in a hallway that's only this wide, and I throw chairs on one side and fill them with people that potentially interfere with you while you're in the middle of your self-defense situation, for lack of a better term, it's only then you start to realize, wow, I didn't have as much room as I thought. I couldn't do the things I wanted to do because I was hindered by X, Y, or Z. It became important.
Yeah, that's something I noticed about the Tiki. My experience with it, the first time I came out, coming from a much different background than the Taekwondo and everything, was I saw there was a seminar and I hadn't trained in a while. And then I saw that the guy that was running it ran a Taekwondo and Hapkido schools. So I basically, everybody, when they hear those two words, based on your experience and background, you know what they mean, and they may or may not be for you.
Yeah.
Based mostly on how good the instruction is that you've gotten that goes with those terms.
Right.
So, going over there, I said, well, worst case scenario, I'm going to spend the $25. Worst case scenario, I get to beat up on some nerds that are used to walking around in white pajamas. And, best case scenario, I end up finding some really cool people. And that was what ended up happening, and why, we're on year 4 of me going to it, and, probably year 5 or 6 of you doing it.
I'm not sure how many this is right now.
A couple of those shots to the head during the car.
It's a bunch.
Section.
Yeah, there's a vehicle there that you will have to deal with a confrontation in the vehicle. So you run into a lot of different things there. And this next one, I'm gonna try and each time I try, it's getting harder and harder to come up with new things and challenge people, because there's people that are repeating coming to this, reoccurring, and so I need to have something new for them to experience when they come to it. So it's getting a little more difficult to come up with new things, but this one I think it might, if I pull it off, it's going to be over the top.
Yeah, and that's been my experience with it, after being involved with one martial art or another for 23 years, obviously not training that entire time.
Right.
But I look at it as a skills audit. What you manage to do is you have scenarios that you set up where you're not wanting, the Taekwondo Hapkido answer, you're just wanting an answer that meets the following objective criteria.
Right.
Would you be left bleeding out on the floor? Well, if no, then you probably did something okay. May not have been what you would do or I would do, but,
It's hard to argue with success.
Yeah, maybe that spastic seizure was just the right time, the right technique for the right moment that one time.
Yeah, I agree.
And then, go over a little bit of what somebody can expect in the Tiki as far as the specific, it's set up almost like a circuit with different stations and training times, without giving away the big surprises.
Well, the first thing we got to do is we got to segment people. I got 3 primary groups of individuals: those that are beginners, brand new, don't have any banging experience, don't want to really bang, but doesn't mean that we shouldn't be able to teach them something that they can use to defend themselves or the family. And then we got a middle of the road group that doesn't mind a little bit of banging, and then we got people that want to go out there and bang. And the first thing that happens is people generally gravitate to those groups, and I do my best to separate them, because each group needs something different. those that are experienced bangers do not need me to go back to, okay, let's go to structure, because structure is real important. If you don't have the structure, you know, any weapons you have in your hand are worthless anyway. You know, it takes good body mechanics no matter what you have. So we'll do that, and then it's only 3 hours, so we're going to cram a lot of stuff in there. We've got the car out back, so I'll have a group at a time going out to the car and working their way out of that problem, solving that problem out there, which is always a lot of fun. People seem to love that one to the max. And then inside, you know, we're dealing with empty-hand confined spaces, how to deal with some of those confined spaces. I go into what is our targeting? What's our best bang for the buck? Because ultimately, everything we do, we want to end the confrontation right now. What can I do to end this now? Okay, which really comes down to specific targeting. So there's a lot about specific targeting. The human off button, how can we access it? What's the number 2 knockouts place? Things of that nature. And then generally we'll also touch on edge weapons and dealing with firearms. And I always try and have a segment in there illustrating people on current drugs. Spice, salvia, and other things that are coming out.
That crocodile one, they're
horrible.
The pictures of that have given me nightmares.
But I have a presentation where I'll generally show videos of people under the influence of some of these drugs, and just to highlight the people that, look, man, if you're dealing with somebody like this, you really can't fool around. You know, their pain tolerances are through the roof. You know, things that work on normal people don't generally work on these types of individuals. So I'm going to touch on all of that.
So it's a pretty fast-paced 3 hours.
It really is. It really is.
All right. Well, you know, we're running up on time a little bit, so I really appreciate you taking a few minutes to come talk with us.
Thank you.
You know, we'll have to do this again sometimes because there's a few things I want to go into in a little bit more depth. So we'll see you on April 23rd, and I'm going to be bringing friends.
I'd love to. Look forward to it.
Look forward to it.
Hope to see you there too.